A quote, counterintelligence disaster. That's how one former intelligence official is describing a stunning new move by the Trump administration that could have compromised the identities of countless staffers at the country's top spy agency. NBC News is confirming news that was first reported by the New York Times. Reports that the CIA has sent a list of all recent hires in an unclassified email as part of its effort to comply with an executive order trimming the federal workforce. That list included the first names and first initials of the last names of everyone hired in the last 2 years, meaning that list is a potential gold mine for America's adversaries. One former senior intelligence official telling NBC News this, quote, any foreign intelligence service worth its weight could apply research and analytic tools to marry up these names and initials with other public records to identify and target many of them. And the New York Times is reporting that the list, quote, includes a large crop of young analysts and operatives who were hired specifically to focus on China and whose identities are usually closely guarded because Chinese hackers are constantly seeking to identify them. Compounding the fears that the list could get into the wrong hands, news that we've been reporting on in the last few days here, that Elon Musk and his team, people with zero government experience and no expertise in handling classified information, have been burrowing their way into practically every government agency. New York Times is reporting this, quote, some former officials said they worried that the list could be passed on to a team of newly hired young software experts working with Elon Musk and his government efficiency team. If that happens, the names of the employees might be more easily targeted by China or Russia or other foreign intelligence services. The breaking news this afternoon of a Trump administration initiative potentially endangering the identities of staffers at the CIA is where we start today. With us for the hour is Sarah Longwell. She's the publisher of The Bulwark and host of the podcast, The Focus Group. Also joining us for the hour, MSNBC national affairs analyst John Heilemann here at the table. He's the chief political columnist for Puck, the host of the podcast In Politic. But we start with the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, Congressman Jim Himes of Connecticut. Congressman, tell me what you understand about this list and the employees on it.
Well, yeah, Nicole, it's been a bad day for the CIA, an agency I care a lot about. Not only is this, list of names out there so unnecessary, right? It is so easy to convey these kinds of things through classified channels. So it's an absolutely unnecessary boon to foreign intelligence services. But two, I'm sure you've also heard about the blanket retirement offer that was offered to every CIA employee. Look, I get the director's desire to try to reorient the CIA towards China. We've been doing that for many years. What are we going to do when three of our very best China analysts, fluent in Mandarin, with 2 years worth of work to get them their security clearances, decide to take this retirement package? So again, a tough day for national security. But to answer your question directly, look, it is not hard when you combine. Let's imagine that the Chinese see that somebody named Bob Smith is on that list. Not hard to get credit card records for Northern Virginia. Not hard to look at residencies or voter registration rolls or Facebook pages that indicate where you live to figure out who somebody is, even if their name is slightly masked. So, yeah, this is, as your person put it, anybody worth their salt could pretty easily get to actual names. And these are people who, in many instances, will have spent, years in training and arguably years in getting security clearances. So just an absolute unnecessary counterintelligence risk was assumed today.
Let me share the Wall Street Journal reporting about the buyout with our viewers. This was first reported by the Wall Street Journal. The CIA offered buyouts to its entire workforce Tuesday in what officials said is a bid to bring the agency in line with Trump's priorities, including targeting drug cartels. The agency is also freezing the hiring of job seekers already given a conditional offer. An aide to CIA Director John Ratcliffe said some are likely to be rescinded if the applicants don't have the right background for the agency's new goals, which include Trump's trade war and undermining China. It feels like the undermining of China is inconsistent with the list that was created of new analysts focused on China. Have you been given any explanation for why the names on the list were put on the list other than they were hired in the last 2 years?
No, not at all. Again, the committee has not yet received any information on this, but you can bet we'll be requesting information. You know, the example I just used, as long as we're talking about the Chinese, you know who's worth their weight in gold? The young person who is fluent in Mandarin and Cantonese, who was born in this country but who is culturally familiar with China. That person is somebody we are going to invest an immense amount of money in. We are going to hire into the CIA, and they are going to be single-handedly critical to our national security. And it is now possible, in my previous example, I used Bob S. I'm guessing that there's a reasonable probability that somebody who grew up in a culturally Chinese family may not have such a common first name. It is now very possible that the Chinese know who that individual might be.
Do we know how many people were covert individuals? And I guess I ask that because a list with names, you know, sometimes CIA employees try to blend in with an embassy workforce, and sometimes they're posted all over the world. I mean, do we know, has Mr. Ratcliffe fielded any questions or offered any reassurances that these individuals knew their names would be put on an unclassified list and shared with the Trump White House?
Yeah, again, what an unnecessary mistake, right? It is so easy to send classified information from one government agency to the other. So this, to me, was just it appears to have been done because of inattention. And I'll make another point, because yes, you know, somebody who's going to spend their career as an analyst, you know, primarily sitting in the Washington metropolitan area, their cover matters less than somebody who is maybe going to operate under non-official cover. Non-official cover means they're not covered by diplomatic immunity. There's a little bit of a spectrum of risk and importance of cover there. But guess what? That analyst who may be spending most of their career in the Washington metropolitan area will from time to time meet with people in cafes or elsewhere around the world who have much, much more valuable and dangerous covers. So again, nothing good to be said about what we saw happen today.
I want to just play a little bit of an interview I did with Sue Gordon in 2022 about what this was when it was widely believed that Trump would run for president again. Trump is sort of always going to run for president again because he never conceded his defeat in 2020. Let me just play this for you. It had some particular resonance for me today.
My experience is that the former president has his agenda, and he will use whatever is at his disposal to advance that. The problem we have here is that depending on what agenda issues forth, he has had at his disposal for a long period of time information that if he used that information to advance an agenda item, it could have devastating consequence to national security. But I can't think of a simpler way to say why I think that this moment is so difficult. And that's because there's no justification and knowing who he is and that he doesn't fully understand, but he may not decide to protect if he wanted to do something different.
So that's the former director of national intelligence, Sue Gordon, and the "it" is the intelligence product. But listening to her say in 2022, after Trump was indicted for mishandling national defense information, the Mar-a-Lago documents case, saying knowing who he is and that he doesn't fully understand, he may not decide to protect it if he wanted to do something different. I guess I wanted to share that with you as someone who has taken an oath but is in the minority as a member of the Democratic Party. What is owed to these individuals whose first initial, their last names, is now circulating in an unclassified list in Washington?
Well, Nicole, they take some of the same risks that our men and women in uniform take. And often with less protection, right? Because they are, by definition, certainly the ones that are operational, the case officers who are operating in very, very dangerous places around the world. They are living undercover. If they are discovered, and especially those that don't have diplomatic immunity, I mentioned them earlier, you know, it can be curtains for them. And that's why we go to such lengths especially in this world of digital dust, meaning wherever you move with a cell phone, wherever you swipe a credit card, wherever you use a debit card, there is a record that in theory somebody can get. That's why we go to such great lengths to make sure that, our trainees are not buying gas, at the gas station next to headquarters in Langley, Virginia. We really go to great lengths. And what's so painful about this episode is, again, it's just not that hard to convey classified information from one government department to the other. So we've put a lot of people needlessly at risk here. And young people at the start of their careers. These are people who, if they do well, are going to spend decades keeping the American people safe. And now, over the course of that many-decade career, they'll wonder, has my cover been compromised?